Phaedo by Plato, Part 5 of 5, translated by Sanderson Beck. So again, he said, tell me from the beginning, and do not answer me what I ask, but imitate me. And I mean beyond what was first said, that safe answer, seeing now another safe one out of what was said. For if you ask me what makes something hot, I will not tell you that safe ignorant answer that it is heat, but out of the more refined now that it is fire. And if you ask what makes a body ill, I will not say that it is an illness, but a fever. And what makes a number to be odd, I will not say oddness, but a one, and so on. But see if already you sufficiently understand what I mean. But quite sufficiently, he said. So answer, he said, what makes the body to be alive? The soul, he said. Then is this always the case? Of course, he said. Then the soul that takes possession of it, does it always come bringing life to that? It does, he said. And first, is there anything opposite to life or not? There is, he said. What? Death. Then will the soul ever accept the opposite to what it always brings, as out of the previous agreement? Most certainly not, said Sebes. What then? So now, what do we name the form not accepting the even? Uneven, he said. And what does not accept the just and the musical? Unmusical, he said, and the unjust. Well, and what does not accept death, we call what? Immortal, he said. Then does the soul not accept death? No. So the soul is immortal. Immortal. Well, he said, then shall we say this is demonstrated? How does it seem? And most sufficiently, Socrates. What then, Sebes, he said? If it was necessary for the uneven to be indestructible, what else than indestructible would the three be? For how could it not? Then if also it was necessary for the heatless to be indestructible, whenever any heat approached snow, would the snow withdraw to be safe and unmelted? For it could not have perished, nor could it remaining have accepted the heat. You say the truth, he said. In the same way, I think also, if the coldless were indestructible, whenever anything cold approached fire, it would never be extinguished nor perish, but having gone away safe, it would endure. By necessity, he said. Then also, he said, is it not necessary to say this about the immortal? If the immortal is also indestructible, it is impossible for the soul, when death comes upon it, to perish. For out of what was said before, it will not accept death, nor will it be dead. Just as we said the three will not be even, nor will the odd, nor fire cold, nor the heat in the fire. But what prevents, someone might say, the odd from becoming even when approached by the even, as we agreed? But perishing, the even becomes it instead of that. To the one saying this, we would have nothing to contend that it does not perish. For the uneven is not indestructible, since if this were conceded to us, we could easily contend that when the even approaches, the odd and the three withdrawing are gone. And we could contend this about fire and heat and the others, or could we not? Certainly. So too now concerning the immortal, if it is conceded to us also to be indestructible, but if not, another argument would be needed. But it is not needed, he said, on account of this. For scarcely anything else would not accept ruin, if the immortal, which is eternal, will accept ruin. But God, I think, said Socrates, and the form of life itself, and if there is anything else immortal, by all it would be agreed they will never perish. Of course, by all people, by God, he said, and even more, I think, by gods. Since then the immortal is also incorruptible, the soul, if it happens it is immortal, also would be indestructible. Very definitely. Then when death comes upon a person, the mortal part of one, it seems, dies, and the immortal, safe and incorruptible, going away is gone, withdrawing from death. It appears so. Then, more than all, Cebes, he said, the soul is immortal and indestructible, and in reality our souls will exist in Hades. So I, Socrates, he said, have nothing else to say along these lines, nor can I disbelieve the arguments. However, if Simmias or anyone else has anything to say, he would do well not to keep silent, as I do not know any other time to which it could be delayed other than now in the present, if anyone is wishing either to say or hear anything about such things. But, said Simmias, I myself have no disbelief from the discussion, yet under the greatness which the arguments are about, and not esteeming human weakness, I still must have disbelief along my lines about what was said. Not only that, Simmias, said Socrates, but also the first hypotheses, even if they are believed by you, similarly, should be more carefully examined, and if you analyze them sufficiently, I think you will follow the argument as closely as it is possible for a human to do, and if this itself becomes clear, you will not seek further. You tell the truth, he said. But men, he said, it is right to understand that if the soul is immortal, then it is necessary to take care of her not only for this time which we call life, but for all time. And the danger now also seems to be terrible if one does not take care of her. For if death were a release from everything, it would be a godsend for the evil, who in dying would be released from the body and at the same time from their evils with the soul. But now, since it appears to be immortal, no one can escape from evils nor be saved in any other way except by becoming as good and wise as possible. For the soul goes into Hades having nothing else except her education and nurture, which, it is said, greatly helps or harms the dead in the very beginning of the journey there. And so it is said that then each angel of each of the dead, as assigned in life, attempts to lead them into a place where those gathered must be judged to pass into Hades with that guide who has been appointed to conduct them from here to there. And there, occurring that which must happen and remaining for the necessary time, another guide brings them here again after many long periods of time. And the journey is not as Aeschylus's Telephus says, for that one says a simple path brings one into Hades. But it appears to me to be neither simple nor single, for it would not need guides, for no one could ever stray from a single road. But now it seems to have many forks and circuits. I speak from the signs of the holy rites and customs here. Therefore, the orderly and sensible soul follows and does not ignore the present. But the one having desires of the body, as I said previously, excited about that for a long time, and around the visible place, after much resistance and much suffering, departs, led by force and with pain by the appointed angel. And arriving where the others are, the impure and any having done such a thing as taking part in unjust murders or other such actions, which happen to be brother acts of these and of sister souls, it is avoided and shunned by all, who also are not willing to become its companion nor guide. But she wanders by herself in complete confusion until it should be a certain time, when going out by necessity she is carried into her proper home. But those who pass through life purely and moderately, and getting divine companions and guides, each lives in her proper place. And there are many marvelous regions of the earth, and she is neither in size nor in any way what she is imagined by those who are used to talking about the earth, as I am persuaded by someone. And Simmias said, What do you mean by that, Socrates? For I have heard much about the earth myself, yet not the things you believe, so gladly I would listen. Well then, Simmias, it does not seem to me to be the art of Glaucus to narrate what she is. Yet as truth, it appears to me to be harder than by the art of Glaucus, and at the same time, perhaps, I would not be able to. And besides, even if I knew how, it seems to me my life, Simmias, would be over before the argument is adequate. Yet nothing prevents my telling what I believe to be the form of the earth and her regions. But, said Simmias, that will be adequate. I believe then, he said, that first, if she is in the middle of the heavens being carried round, she needs neither air nor any other such necessity for her not to fall, but sufficient to maintain her and the likeness of heaven to all of it, and the equal balance of the earth herself. For something equally balanced put in the middle of something similar will not incline at all more nor less, but similarly stays unswerving. First, he said, I believe this. And correctly, said Simmias. Next, then, he said, she is something very large, and those of us living between the pillars of Heracles and the Phasis River live in a small portion around the sea, like ants or frogs around a pond, and many others elsewhere live in many such places. For there are everywhere around the earth many hollows of all sorts, both in form and greatness, into which the water and the mists and the air have flowed together. But the earth pure herself is situated in the pure heaven, in which the stars are, which is called ether, by many who are used to talking about such things, of which these are the sediment, and flow together always into the hollows of the earth. So our living in her hollows is unnoticed, and we think we are living up on the earth, just as if someone who lived at the bottom of mid-ocean should think one lived on the sea. And through the water, seeing the sun and the other stars, should believe the sea to be heaven, and because of slowness and weakness, never reach the surface of the sea, nor ever seen, getting out and popping up out of the sea into this place, which happens to be more pure and beautiful than theirs, nor having heard from another who had seen. And this is the same thing we have experienced. For living in some of the hollows of the earth is to think one is living above her, and to call the air heaven, since because of this heaven the stars really move. But the fact is, by weakness and slowness we are not able to go through to the utmost air, since if anyone should go to the top of it, or become winged should reach it, popping up to look down, just as the fish, popping up out of the sea, see things here, so someone there also could look down on things, and if by nature were capable to hold up to the looking, would recognize that that is truly heaven, and truly the light, and so truly the earth. For this earth and the stones and the whole region here are corrupted and devoured, just like things in the sea by the brine, and nothing worth any meaning grows in the sea, nor, as one might say, is anything perfect, but it is caves and sand and endless mud and mire, where there would be earth also, and nothing is any way worthy to be judged beautiful compared to our things. But those things would appear to surpass even much more ours. For if it is necessary also to tell a story worth hearing, Simmias, it hits upon the things on the earth which are below the heavens. But Socrates, said Simmias, we would gladly listen to this story. Then it is said, friend, he said, first, that to see the earth is such, if one looked from above, as 12 spheres, varied with distinct colors, for which also the colors are like patterns, with which the painters color. But there the whole earth is made out of these, and out of even brighter and purer ones than these. For the purple also is of amazing beauty, and the golden, and the white, whiter than chalk or snow. And she is composed likewise out of the other colors, still more amazing and beautiful than the ones we see. For these very same hollows, which are full of water and air, present a form of color, shining among the varied colors, so that in her continuous form she appears varied. And in this same reality, growing things grow in proportion, trees and flowers and the fruits. And further, the mountains likewise and the stones are by the same ratio smoother and transparent, and the colors more beautiful. And the pebbles, which here are these prized ones, sards and jaspers and emeralds, and all such gems. But there, what is not such is even more beautiful than these. And the reason for this is that those stones are pure and not devoured and corrupted as those here are, by rottenness and brine flowing together here, which also produce in stones and earth and the other animals and plants deformity and disease. And the earth herself has been arranged with all these, and also with gold and silver and other such things. For showing forth these have grown, being many, abundant and large, and in many places of the earth, so that seeing her is a blessed sight to see. And upon her there are many other animals and people, some living inland, and some around the air, as we around the sea, and some on islands which the air flows around, being next to the mainland. And in a word, what the water and the sea are to us for our use, there the air is this, and what the air is to us, the ether is to them. And its seasons have such temperature that they have no diseases, and a lifetime is much longer than here. And sight and hearing and sensibility and all such things stand apart from ours in the same way as air stands apart more pure than water, and ether than air. So also even their groves and sacred places are divine, in which gods are really living, and speaking, and prophecies and visions of the gods, and such communions occur with these to them. And the sun and moon and stars are seen by them as they really are, and otherwise happiness is in accord with these. And so the whole earth has such a nature, and the things around the earth. But in her, down in her hollows, round about the whole, are many regions, some deeper and more spread out than those in which we live, and some deeper, having a narrower opening than our region, and some are shorter in depth than here, and are wider. But all these are connected to each other by the earth in many places, down both narrower and wider, and having passages through which much water flows from one to another like in a basin, and ever-flowing rivers extraordinarily large under the earth, and of warm and cold waters, and much fire, and great rivers of fire, and many streams of mud, both thinner and thicker, like in Sicily the rivers of mud flowing before the lava, and the lava itself. And so which fill each of the regions, as to each by chance the flowing around each time occurs. And all these move up and down like some oscillation within the earth. And so this oscillation through nature is some such thing. One of the chasms of the earth happens to be greater than the rest, and is bored right through the whole earth, this of which Homer himself says, "Far off, where deepest beneath the earth is an abyss," and which elsewhere he and many other poets have called Tartarus. For all the rivers flow together into this chasm and flow out of it again, and each becomes such as the earth through which it also flows. And the cause of all the streams flowing in and out of here is that this liquid has no foundation nor base, so it oscillates and waves up and down, and the air and the wind around it do the same thing, for they follow it, both when it moves into the other side of the earth and when it moves into this side. And like the breath stream of the breathing also blows out and blows in, so too there the wind oscillates with the liquid and produces some terrible and extraordinary winds, both going out and going in. Therefore, when the water withdraws into the region called the lower, it flows into the streams down there through the earth, and fills them like pumps. And when it sinks from there and moves here, it fills the ones here again, and being filled, they flow through the passages and through the earth, and into the regions they each reach, into which each makes a path, and they make seas and marshes and rivers and springs, and from there again sinking beneath the earth, some going around larger regions and more, and others lesser and smaller, again emptying into Tartarus, some much below where they were emitted, and some a little, but all flow in below the exit. And some flow in opposite where they came out, and others below the same part. And there are some going completely around in a circle, either once or even many times wound around the earth like snakes, descending as low as possible, emptying in again. And it is possible to go down both ways as far as the center, but no further, for it is uphill to both streams from either side of the center. So then these streams are many and great and of all kinds, and it happens then that among these many are 4 streams, the greatest and outermost of which flows in a circle and is called Oceanus. And opposite this, flowing oppositely, is Acheron, which flows through other desert regions, and flowing under the earth arrives into the Acherusian lake, at which the souls of most of the dead arrive, and having stayed for the time due, some longer and some shorter, again are sent out to be born into living creatures. And the 3rd river comes out between these, and near its exit it falls into a great region burning with much fire, and it makes a lake greater than a sea by us, boiling with water and mud. And from there it withdraws in a circle turbid and muddy, and winding around to another place it arrives also at the edge of the Acherusian lake, not mingling with its water, but winding around many times beneath the earth, empties lower than Tartarus. And this is what they name Pyriphlegethon, from which also the lava streams drawn off spout up wherever they happen to on the earth. And opposite this, the 4th falls first into a region terrible and wild, as it is said, the whole of which having a dark blue color, which they name Stygian. And the lake which the river emptying makes, Styx. And having fallen in here, and received terrible powers in the water, passing beneath the earth, winding around it withdraws opposite to the Pyriphlegethon, and meets it in the Acherusian lake from the other side. And also this water does not mingle with any, but this too, going around in a circle, empties into Tartarus opposite to the Pyriphlegethon. And the name of this is, as the poets say, Cocytus. Such is the nature of these when the dead arrive at the place where the angel brings each. First they are judged, those who lived well and piously, and those who did not. And the ones judged not to have lived moderately, going to the Acheron, embarking on ships which are for them, arrive in them at the lake. And there they live and are purified of the wrongs, making amends they are forgiven, if someone did something wrong. And of the good deeds they gain something, each according to merit. But the ones judged to have incurable wrongs because of the greatness of the faults, or who committed many and great sacrileges, or unjust murders and many crimes, or who happen to do any other such things, the fitting destiny casts these into Tartarus, from where they never get out. But the curable ones, judged to have committed great crimes, who in anger did something violent to father or mother, and lived the rest of their life in repentance, or who were manslaughterers in some other such way, they fall into Tartarus by necessity. They, having fallen, and also having been there a year, the wave throws them out, the manslaughterers by the Cocytus, the father-beaters and mother-beaters by the Pyriphlegethon. And when they have been carried by the Acherusian lake, from there they cry and call to those they killed, and to those they offended, and calling they beg and ask to allow them to get out into the lake and be accepted. And if they persuade them, they get out, and they cease the evils. But if not, they are carried again into the Tartarus, and from there again into the rivers. And these sufferings do not stop until they persuade those they wronged. For this is the sentence imposed on them by the judges. But the ones judged to have lived excelling in holiness, these are free from these regions in the earth, and released as from prisons, and arriving up into the pure home they dwell on earth. And of these, those purified sufficiently by philosophy live without bodies altogether in the time thereafter, and arrive into homes even more beautiful than these, which are not easy to describe, nor is there sufficient time in the present. However, on account of these things we discussed, we ought to do everything so as to share in virtue and thoughtfulness in life, for the contest is beautiful and the hope great. So for such things to be relied upon as being thus, as I described, it is not fitting for a man having intelligence, yet that it is this or some such thing concerning our souls and the homes, since the soul appears to be immortal, this also seems to be fitting, and a venture worthy of imagining it is so, for the venture is beautiful. And such things are useful in singing to oneself, wherefore I also have lengthened the past story. However, on account of these things, it is useful for a man to take courage concerning his soul, who in life renounced the other pleasures of the body and its ornaments as being alien, believing even more it is another thing to be perfected, and has been serious about learning things, and has adorned the soul not with something alien, but with her own order, discretion, and justice, and courage, and freedom, and truth. Thus one waits for the journey into Hades as passing when destiny should call. So you, Simmias, he said, and Cebes and the others, hereafter in some time each will pass, but now already it calls me. A man of tragedy would say, destiny. And the hour is close for me to turn to the bath, for it is better to be bathed to drink the drug, and not cause the women the trouble of bathing the corpse. When he had said these things, Crito said, Well, Socrates, what do you direct me to do, either concerning the children or anything else which we could do for you as a special favor? As I always say, Crito, he said, nothing new. That taking care of yourselves, you are doing a favor both to me and mine and yourselves, if you do, even if now you do not promise. But if you neglect yourselves and are not willing to live as on the track of these speeches now and the previous ones, no, even if you promise much in the present and vehemently, you will not do any better. Accordingly, we shall be eager, he said, to do so. But in what manner shall we bury you? However you wish, he said, if you can catch me, and I do not escape from you. And laughing gently and at once looking toward us, he said, I have not convinced Crito, men, that I am this Socrates, who now is conversing and arranging each part of the arguing. But he thinks I am that corpse which he will see a little later. And so he asks how he should bury me. And though I have just made much argument that when I drink the drug, I shall no longer stay with you, but I shall go away into the joys of the blessed. These things about me to him I seem to say otherwise, encouraging at once both you and myself. So you will give me a pledge to Crito, he said, the opposite than the one which you pledged to the judges. For that one was to remain, but you will pledge I am not to remain when I die, but I shall go away, so that Crito may bear it more easily, and seeing my body either burned or buried, would not be upset on my behalf as terrible suffering, nor say at the funeral that Socrates is being displayed or carried out or buried. For know well, excellent Crito, he said, to say what is not beautiful not only is wrong by itself, but also it produces evil in the souls. But you must have courage, and say this body is being buried, and bury it thus as is pleasing to you, and as you believe is most customary. Having said this, he stood up to go into a room for bathing, and Crito followed him, and he ordered us to wait. Thus waiting, we were discussing among ourselves about the things said and examined, and then about the circumstances gone through, how it would come to be for us, really believing as though deprived of a father, we would spend life thereafter as orphans. And when he had bathed and the children had been brought to him, for there were 2 of his small sons and 1 big one, and the women of the family had arrived, having conversed with them facing Crito, and commanded some things he wished, he ordered the women and the children to go away, and came himself to us. And it was already near sunset, for he spent a long time inside. And coming, he sat down having bathed, and after that not much was discussed. And the servant of the 11 came and stood by him. Socrates, he said, I shall not condemn you as I condemn others, who are angry with me and curse when I give them the word to drink the drug compelled by the rulers. And I have known you to be otherwise in this time, the noblest and gentlest and best man who ever arrived here. And even now I know well that you are not angry with me, but with those, for you know the ones responsible. Now, for you know what I came to announce, goodbye, and try to bear the constraints as easy as possible. And at once, bursting into tears, turning, he went away. And Socrates, looking up at him, said, And goodbye to you, and we shall do these things. And at once to us he said, What a charming person! And during all the time he has come to me, and conversed sometimes, and was the most agreeable of men. And now how nobly he weeps for me. But come now, Crito, let us obey him, and let someone bring the drug if it has been ground, and if not, let a person grind it. And Crito said, But I think, Socrates, the sun is still on the mountains and has not yet set. And at the same time I know also others drank it quite late, when the word should be given to them. They have dined and drank quite well, and kept company with some whom they happen to desire. But do not hurry at all, for it is still permitted. And Socrates said, Naturally, Crito, those do these things which you say, for they think they gain by doing them, and I naturally shall not do these things, for I think I would not gain anything by drinking it a little later other than to bring on ridicule for myself, clinging to life and sparing it when there is nothing still in it. But come, he said, obey, and do not do otherwise. And Crito, having heard, nodded to the boy standing nearby, and the boy, going out and spending a long time, came leading the one intending to give the drug, bringing it in a cup ground. And Socrates, seeing the person, said, Well, best one, for you have knowledge of these things, what is necessary to do? Nothing, he said, except drinking it to walk around until your legs become heavy. Then lie down, and thus it will do it itself. And at the same time he held out the cup to Socrates, and taking it and very gently at Socrates, not trembling nor changing color or expression, but as he was accustomed to doing, looking up like a bull toward the person, he said, What do you say about pouring out a libation to someone? Is it allowed or not? We grind such amount, Socrates, he said, as we think to be the measure to drink. I understand, he said, but it is allowed and useful to pray anyway to the gods, that the chains of residence from here to there be fortunate, which now also I pray, and may it be so. And having said these things, at once holding it up, he drank it off very accommodatingly and calmly. And most of us up to this time were reasonably able to restrain from weeping. But as we saw him drinking, and having drunk it, no longer could we, but in spite of myself, even my tears were coming not in drops, so that hiding my face, I was wailing. For it was not for him, but for my own fortune, of a man who was being deprived of such a companion. And Crito got up even before I, when he could not restrain his tears. But Apollodorus, even in the previous time, did not stop weeping. And so then, really roaring out, the wailing was so upsetting that there was no one who did not break down of those present, except Socrates himself. But he said, What sort of things you are doing, you wonders! Yet not least did I send away the women on account of this, so that they would not offend in such ways. For I have heard that it is useful to die among praising, but keep quiet and be patient. And we, having heard, were ashamed and restrained the weeping. And walking around, when he said his legs were heavy, he lay down on his back, for the person ordered this. And at once this giver of the drug grasping him, after a time he examined his feet and legs. And when he had pressed hard his foot, he asked if he felt it. No, he said. And after this in turn the calves, and going up thus he showed us that he was growing cold and stiff. And again he touched him and said that when it reached his heart, then he would be gone. So already the cooling was nearly about his abdomen, and uncovering his head, for he had covered it up, he said, which he really uttered dying, "Crito," he said, "we owe to Asclepius a cock, but pay it and do not neglect it." "But this shall be done," said Crito, "but see if you have anything else to say." Having asked him this, he no longer answered, but a short time after he moved, and the person uncovered him, and his eyes were set. And Crito, seeing it, closed his mouth and eyes. Such was the end, Echecrates, of our companion, a man, as we might say, of those we had experience of at that time, who was best, and besides most sensible and most just.